Hey everyone, do you want to use one of the most famous bus compressors with some extra features? Kiive has you covered. This is XBus. Hi, my name is Tim. If it's your first time here, I'm a recording and mix engineer, and I just want to make things easier for you. Today we're going to go over XBus from Kiive Audio. We've worked with them in the past, and they're good friends of the channel, so we're going to check out some of the added features to this very common styled compressor, but the extra features really make this one stand out. Let's dive into the DAW. So here it is. This is the XBus compressor from our friends at Kiive. We've seen compressors like this before. So instead of going over all of the compressor controls, what we're actually going to do is go over the bottom section and the added features, because this is a very common compressor, but the added features is what sets this one apart. If you want to jump ahead to the audio examples, use the chapters. So let's start from the top and we'll work our way down. Like we've seen in other Kiive plugins, we have our preset browser up on top. We also have input and output controls, so we can balance things if we need to, or drive in harder or too hard. You know what I mean. Next to that, we have our in and our out, where we can control the input and output levels of the overall unit itself. And there's a little chain button in between, and this is what actually links or unlinks the controls for the rest of the plugin. So your global link is right here. HQ is your oversampling. If you just open into this, you can see there's multiple options in here. And there's now, with the latest update, which is a very minor update, there is external sidechaining. So you can turn that on or off here. Next to that is an arrow. And what this arrow actually does is just collapses the plugin down to just one. Technically you have two, but it's not dual mono unless you switch it. And it's left and right if you turn the link off. Next to that, A side, B side, undo, redo, and then just your menu button. So let's get into the overall. We're actually going to start in the very middle, where you have these three selector switches. Mono, which is the top one, ST is stereo, and then MS is mid-side. So you can use this in just your standard stereo configuration. You can use it in a mid-side configuration or just in a mono configuration. The link connector underneath that is what links the left and the right. Let's say we have mono and we turn this off. I can now adjust the right side, which is just the right mono, versus the left side. I can adjust them independently. Way down underneath that is a width control. So if you put this on, let's say, your mix bus, you can actually just push things out a little bit further. It's kind of a nice little added feature. Then going over the compressor controls, threshold, makeup gain, attack and release by default are set in the classic style where it has fixed numbers. But if you just hit this button on the attack and release, you now turn it into milliseconds, and you can dial in whatever you need within the parameters of what's available. So let's say for attack, the slowest is 30 milliseconds and the fastest is 0.1 milliseconds. But let's say you needed 0.15. You can dial it in like this. Same thing goes for the release, all the way up to auto, which is still there, 2 seconds, and anything in between 2 seconds, all the way down to 0.1 second. Underneath that is the ratio control with some extra ratios in there. 3:1 isn't very common, and 5:1 isn't too common on these style compressors, but it's nice to have in here. A wet-dry blend control right inside of the plugin. The in is just actually turning on the compression circuit. That's what the in button here will do. You can see the lights turning on and off. And then next to that is the ADV, or the advanced button, which just opens the bottom section. And this is all those extra features that we're going to go over. So the top section is your sidechain, where you can dial in or dial out different things within your source signal to not trigger the compressor. This is very common if you want to just roll off like your low ends so that your kicks are not triggering your compressor too hard, and you can just kind of roll off the low ends. But in this plugin, what you can do is actually boost some mid-range or even cut your top end. Instead of it just being a high-pass filter, and that's generally what you would see within a sidechain control, this gives you even more options. And the headphone button to the left of all those allows you to listen to the sidechain, so you can really dial things in. Then underneath that is the saturation section. And in other plugins of this similar style compressor, the saturation is kind of built in, and you have to just kind of push into it a little bit more. With XBus, you can add it in additionally without having to just like crank the input and then balance things out later. So you can add in the saturation by turning it on or off, and then having a complete mix control adding in odd order harmonics, even order harmonics, and there's a tilt EQ in here as well. And it also gives you the positioning. Do you want the saturation to be before the compression circuit or after everything else? So lots of control underneath here. Last but not least is headroom. Headroom is more like a side chain input level control. If you want the compressor to be working really hard, but without dialing in extreme settings, you can dial in your settings and then go to headroom and push this way in. The compressor detector circuit will detect more level and will apply more compression without having to go in and adjust your makeup gain or your threshold or anything like that. What this will do is actually cause a little bit of that breakup and some of that analog kind of gluey, warmy saturation. If you want to remove some of that, you can actually just roll this down so that the signal going into the sidechain isn't hitting as hard. And there you go. That's pretty much all of the controls. We have 3 examples for you today. We're going to go over drums with XBus on the drum bus. We're also going to use it on our guitar bus, and we're going to use it on our main bus. So let's jump over to our drums and take a listen. So here we are at our drum bus, and these are all of the settings that I dialed in. I'm going to throw it into bypass at first, but what I wanted to do was just have all of my drums be slightly glued together. With this off, you may notice, and I want you to pay attention to the kick drum and the snare drum. Sometimes they're kind of offset from each other, and one may feel a little punchier than the other. But with XBus and a little bus compression, we're kind of gluing everything together and putting them into almost like this little window of like, here's my drum window. I want you to sit right here. Take a listen. So you probably heard it in there. The kick and snare were tighter, they were closer together, and one wasn't like sticking out over the other. That's the kind of glue I want on my whole drum kit. Now let's jump over to guitars. I threw XBus onto a all guitars bus that I have right here with some extra stuff going on. It goes from XBus into some tape emulation and just a little bit of soothe just to kind of clean things up. Here are my settings for my guitar bus, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I want you to listen to the guitars and how much they're going to glue together, especially in this chorus, because we have 4 stereo guitar stacks happening. So in that, where we were squeezing, we were bringing a lot of the mids really forward. I hope you heard that. And we're not really going for transient control on guitars, especially distorted guitars. Yes, they can be picky, they can be plucky, and they can have some of that attack, but that's not what I'm going for with this compression. I'm just going for squeeze, glue, and that nice little mid lift. Speaking of that mid lift, now I've gone to my entire instrument mix. I've just taken the vocals out. And I'm going to start with XBus on my guitars out. So in the context of the mix, listen to what it does to the guitars and how it'll bring all of those mids right in the middle really forward for you. I'm going to show you one more thing. Let me just close off XBus and get out of this. There are 2 things competing, especially at this part of the song, that I want you to pay attention to, and that's the guitars and my keys, which is a mellotron and a synth. These are all living right in that same region of the mids. And so, yes, there's some EQing going on to help clean things out and to put things into their place. But because of what XBus is doing for our guitars, it's helped gluing all of the guitars together and then kind of standing their own with the synths. Take a listen. I'm going to have XBus open and off while we listen to our guitars and synth, and then I'll drop it in after a couple bars. So it helps bring some of the background elements of the guitars just a little bit more forward and helps make it nice and thick. So we've gone over our instrument settings for our drums and our guitars and how they've all blended together and what it's been doing. Now let's listen to our mix bus. Here are my mix bus settings. Very common, slowest attack, auto release. You know, sometimes maybe you want the fastest release to get really gluey. For this instance, I went with auto. It did what I wanted it to do. The only other things that we're really adding in is some of the saturation. We're definitely using some of that. And this should be in stereo mode. It must be something I clicked earlier. We'll start with this out and we'll put it back in. There are some things happening in my chain after this, but they're all happening after. You're going to be listening to what XBus is doing to our whole mix. I don't know if you heard that. With XBus in, it's actually helping the kick drum kind of have a little bit more punch and stand out a little bit more. So it's helping everything tighten up. It's gluing everything together. We don't have massive things kind of poking out and jumping out. We're getting the glue that you kind of want from this style compressor. Here's another A and B. Try this if you have another compressor like this one. Use it on your mix bus and have one with really fast settings and the threshold to just barely hit when your drums are really kind of spiking, like your kick and your snare. You just want a touch of reduction there. Then follow it up with XBus and put it on settings like we went over at the end with a slow attack and either an auto release or a fast release, and use the two compressors to do some serial compression, and you'll get some really nice results. The first one will tame those peaks, and the second one will glue everything together. XBus is available right now, so use the link down in the description. A little bit will come back to help the channel, so I appreciate that. And in the meantime, happy mixing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.